told you that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one arguing with you, but actually the one quietly nodding, smiling, and like agreeing with absolutely everything you say?
Yeah, it completely flips our standard script for social survival. I mean, we're hardwired to look for the overt threat, right? The loud voice, the aggressive
As the
posture.
obvious competitor.
Exactly.
We look for the wolf baring its teeth. But today, we are talking about the wolf who just, offers to listen to you vent about your day. So, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today for you listening is to pull back the curtain on a deeply fascinating and undeniably Machiavellian concept drawn from the famous text on strategy, the 48 Laws of Power. Specifically, we're unpacking Law 14, which is pose as a friend, work as a spy.
Which, I mean, the title alone sets a very specific, uncompromising tone.
It really does. And to you listening, let's just set the ground rules for how we're approaching this. We have a massive stack of source material today that blends some truly incredible historical anecdotes.
Oh, absolutely wild stories.
Right. Like, we're talking early 20th century art dealers orchestrating multi-year covert operations, 7th century Persian kings running like psychological A/B tests on their friends.
That one is brutal, by the way.
It is, all the way up to World War II military counterintelligence and ancient philosophical treatises. And all of these sources, even though they're separated by centuries, argue one central unifying point.
Right, which is that gathering foreknowledge about the people around you is the ultimate, unrivaled key to power.
Yeah.
But we do need to establish right up front that while the text we're examining uses this highly charged language of espionage words like infiltration, agents, traps, disinformation, it is fundamentally a dissection of the hidden dynamics of polite, everyday social encounters.
Yes, exactly.
The text isn't suggesting you literally put on a trench coat and, wiretap your neighborhood association.
Please do not start interrogating your barista to find out their secret ambitions.
Right, don't do that.
We are acting as impartial guides here. We are not endorsing manipulation or taking a stance on the morality of these tactics. Our goal is just to dissect a famous, heavily debated text on human nature and strategy.
Yeah, we want to look under the hood at the mechanics of how information is gathered, how it's concealed behind a friendly smile, and how it has historically been weaponized.
Because understanding these mechanics is, in a way, a form of self-defense.
Precisely. The ultimate advantage in any scenario is seeing what others do not.
So you might be asking, why should you care about tactics used by 18th century diplomats or Gilded Age art dealers? Because understanding how this works can help you navigate everything from a tense corporate salary negotiation to a high-stakes real estate deal.
Or even just recognizing when you're being subtly probed for information in a supposedly friendly conversation at a dinner party.
Exactly. It's about awareness. Waking up to the game being played around you, even if your choice is simply to, decline to play.
Okay, let's look at the illusion of serendipity. We all like to believe that life is full of happy accidents. A chance meeting in an elevator, discovering you share a niche hobby with a potential client.
But this text kind of shatters that illusion.
Completely shatters it.
Which brings us to our first major historical case study. I like to call this the Joseph Duveen masterclass.
Oh, this is a great one.
If you aren't familiar with Joseph Duveen, he was arguably the greatest, most ruthless art dealer of his time, operating roughly from 1904 to 1940. And the sources tell us that he almost single-handedly monopolized the American millionaire art collecting market.
And we are talking about the era of the great American industrialists. Men who had amassed unimaginable fortunes in steel, railroads, banking, and who now desperately wanted cultural legitimacy.
They wanted European masterpieces to hang in their mansions.
Exactly.
And if you were a titan of industry and you wanted a Rembrandt or a Vermeer, you went through Duveen. He was the gatekeeper.
But there was one prize, one massive whale of a client, who completely eluded him.
Right, the industrialist Andrew Mellon.
Mellon was the holy grail for an art dealer. He was one of the wealthiest men in the world, eventually serving as the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury. But he's also notoriously difficult to approach.
The text describes Mellon as a stiff, taciturn man. He was cold, quiet, intensely reserved, and he harbored a deep hatred for talkative, overly familiar people.
And Duveen.
Duveen was the exact opposite.
He was famous for being congenial, endlessly chatty, theatrical, just larger than life.
Right, and Mellon had heard the stories about Duveen's aggressive sales tactics and basically decided, I have absolutely no desire to ever be in the same room as this man.
Yeah, Duveen's own inner circle told him that landing Mellon was an impossible dream.
But to a strategist like Duveen, impossible is just a problem of missing data.
I love that framing.
He literally told his doubting friends, not only will Mellon buy from me, but he will buy only from me.
That is some serious confidence.
Seriously. But Duveen understood that his usual playbook, walking up to someone at a gala, turning on the aggressive charm, dazzling them with art, that would be fatal with Mellon.
Mellon would see right through it and just shut down.
Right. So Duveen decided that raw, highly specific information was far more valuable than his natural charisma.
This is a crucial pivot point in the text's philosophy, because charm is highly subjective. It often fails if the target's mood is off or if they're just not receptive.
But information is objective.
Yes. If you have enough intelligence on a target, you can tailor a bespoke approach that bypasses their specific defense mechanisms.
And Duveen didn't just do a little background reading on Wikipedia, well, the 1920s equivalent.
Right.
For several years, he tracked Andrew Mellon like a predator studying prey. He secretly put several of Mellon's own staff on his personal payroll.
The sheer audacity of that operation is staggering.
It's wild. He was paying off Mellon's household employees, his valets, his aides, to worm valuable information out of them on a weekly basis.
You built a private intelligence agency focused entirely on one man's domestic life.
He learned everything. Mellon's daily routines, his specific granular tastes in art, his phobias, his favorite subjects of conversation.
Even the exact times of day he was most relaxed.
Yeah, the text notes that by the time Duveen was finally ready to make his move, he knew Andrew Mellon about as well as Mellon's own wife did.
Maybe better.
Maybe better.
Consider the patience involved here. In our modern era, we're so conditioned for instant gratification. We want to send a LinkedIn message and close the deal on the first Zoom call.
Right, get it done today.
But Duveen spent years building an intelligence dossier, investing massive amounts of time and capital before he ever made physical contact.
So let's set the scene for the execution of this multi-year plan. It is 1921, London. Mellon is visiting the city and is staying in a palatial, incredibly luxurious suite on the third floor of Claridge's hotel.
Claridge's is a highly controlled environment. It limits variables, which is exactly what an operation like this requires.
Exactly. So Duveen books himself into the suite directly below Mellon's on the second floor. The chess pieces are now on the board. Duveen has already arranged for his own valet to accidentally quote-unquote befriend Mellon's valet. And then, on the fateful day Duveen chooses to finally strike, the meticulous choreography kicks in.
It really plays out like a scene from a heist movie.
It totally does. Mellon's valet tells Duveen's valet, who immediately sprints to tell Duveen that he has just helped Mr. Mellon put on his overcoat and that Mellon is currently walking down the third-floor corridor to ring for the elevator.
And the window of opportunity here is what, perhaps 30 seconds?
Barely that.
If Duveen is too early, he's just awkwardly waiting in the lobby. If he's too late, Mellon is gone. The timing has to be absolutely flawless.
So Duveen's valet frantically helps Duveen with his own overcoat. Duveen rushes out of his suite, steps into the elevator as it descends, and lo and behold, the door is open, and who is inside?
Andrew Mellon.
Andrew Mellon. Duveen acts completely, utterly surprised. He introduces himself with perfect restrained politeness. He says, "How do you do, Mr. Mellon? I am on my way to the National Gallery to look at some pictures."
Setting the hook with absolute precision, because the National Gallery was, of course, exactly where Mellon was going.
Exactly. Uncannily similar itineraries. So what happens?
Mellon invites him along.
Yeah, Duveen casually, without being overbearing, accompanies Mellon to the museum. And because Duveen has spent years studying Mellon's exact tastes, as they walk through the gallery, Duveen doesn't talk endlessly.
Right, he plays against his own usual type.
He lets Mellon breathe. But when he does speak, he points out specific brushstrokes, specific historical contexts that he knows for a fact Mellon is obsessed with. Their tastes seem remarkably, almost frighteningly, in sync.
And Mellon's internal reaction is exactly what Duveen calculated. Mellon is pleasantly shocked.
Right.
This wasn't the loud, annoying, pushy Duveen he had been warned about. This man was quiet, agreeable, deeply knowledgeable, and seemed to share his exact, exquisite, refined taste in art.
And the result of this engineered serendipity, when they eventually get back to New York, Mellon visits Duveen's gallery. He falls completely in love with the collection.
Which, surprise, surprise, Duveen has perfectly curated in advance to match Mellon's hidden desires.
Exactly. And for the rest of his life, Andrew Mellon becomes Joseph Duveen's best, most generous client. The impossible whale was landed.
It is a stunning victory for the tactic of gathering foreknowledge.
It is. But I have to push back on this a little, or at least play devil's advocate for you listening, because the text uses this analogy. What's the point of winging it? Of just hoping you may be able to charm this or that client? It's like shooting ducks blindfolded.
A harsh analogy, but fair.
I understand the cold logic of that. But isn't there a massive risk that this kind of heavy, multi-year orchestration just ends up feeling completely sterile and unnatural? I mean, if you plan every single syllable, every accidental elevator bump, don't you lose the human element? Doesn't the target subconsciously sense the script?
Well, that is the risk of an amateur execution. But the argument the text makes is that the human element, the unpredictability, the chance of a bad mood ruining a first impression, is exactly what you are trying to bypass. The text argues that a man operating at Duveen's level leaves absolutely nothing to chance. When preparation is that thorough, it doesn't look like preparation to the target. It looks like fate.
It looks like magic.
Exactly. Like you've just met your intellectual soulmate in the elevator at Claridge's. Mellon never suspected a thing because the interaction felt completely organic to him.
Wow.
Furthermore, this level of intelligence gathering creates a really powerful aura. Duveen appeared all-powerful to his rivals. The sources mention another prominent art dealer who is trying to court the wealthy New Yorker, Henry Frick.
Okay.
And this rival noticed that whenever he visited Frick to pitch a painting, Duveen had somehow already been there first.
Oh, man. Like a shadow.
Exactly like a shadow. It was as if Duveen had a sixth sense. To other dealers, Duveen seemed clairvoyant. He seemed to know what the clients wanted before the clients themselves even knew.
That would be so demoralizing.
It completely disheartened his competitors. They simply gave up trying to fight him.
So his intelligence gathering wasn't just an offensive weapon to win clients. It was a defensive shield that destroyed his competition's morale.
That is the core thesis of this opening section. No one sees the source of your power, and what they cannot see, they cannot fight. Duveen's encyclopedic knowledge of his targets made him seem naturally, effortlessly charming because he could anticipate their desires flawlessly.
Right.
He wasn't relying on a silver tongue. He already possessed the answer key before he walked into the exam room.
Think about how this applies today for everyone listening. We don't have valets to bribe, but we have digital footprints.
Oh, absolutely.
If you are going into a major pitch and you spend 3 hours depth diving your clients' past interviews, their social media likes, the philanthropic boards they serve on, their college alumni associations, you are essentially doing what Duveen did.
You're gathering the data to construct that feeling of serendipitous connection when you finally meet. The digital age has essentially democratized Duveen's tactics. We freely publish the intelligence that Duveen had to pay servants to uncover.
Yeah, that's true. But as the text points out, Duveen's specific method of using a network of paid servants, basically operating a private spy ring, is what it calls simple, powerful, but risky, because human beings are wildly fallible.
The vulnerability is immense when you rely on third parties for your intelligence.
Yeah.
You relinquish control over the execution.
Right. A disgruntled valet could have easily walked up to Mellon and said, "Sir, I think you should know that the flamboyant art dealer downstairs has been paying me a small fortune for 2 years to track your every move."
And the moment that happens, the illusion shatters permanently.
The soulmate connection instantly turns into a creepy stalking revelation, and Mellon ensures Duveen is ruined in high society.
Exactly. So if paying off household staff or hiring private investigators is too risky or simply too crass, what is the safer, more sophisticated alternative?
Right.
The text argues that the absolute best way to gather this critical foreknowledge is to do it yourself, directly under the cover of polite conversation.
Which transitions us perfectly to the concept of the conversational infiltrator, the passive probe.
Yes.
The core argument here is that to truly control future events or negotiations, you need to know people's hidden weaknesses, their ulterior motives, the deepest obsessions. And people do not just walk around handing out a menu of their psychological vulnerabilities.
No, they armor themselves. They hide them.
And the text argues the most efficient way to bypass that armor is to pose as a harmless friend.
Historically, few individuals embodied this conversational infiltration better than the legendary French politician and diplomat Charles Maurice de Talleyrand.
Okay, Talleyrand is one of the most fascinating figures in European history.
Early.
He managed to survive and thrive under the French monarchy, the violent chaos of the French Revolution, the Directory, the reign of Napoleon Bonaparte, and the subsequent restoration of the Bourbon kings.
I mean, you don't survive that kind of whiplash without being a master reader of the room.
Exactly. His survival was entirely predicated on his ability to gather intelligence without ever showing his own hand.
The text notes that throughout his life, Talleyrand was considered this absolutely superb, enchanting conversationalist. People genuinely loved talking to him. They found him witty and engaging.
Yet, historically, the reality is that he actually said very little.
He mastered the technique of ego suppression. It sounds simple, but it is incredibly difficult for most human beings to actually execute in practice.
The sources include a brilliant observation from a contemporary of his, Baron de Vitrolles, who wrote about experiencing Talleyrand's conversation firsthand.
What did he say?
He said, "Wit and grace marked his conversation. He possessed the art of concealing his thoughts or his malice beneath a transparent veil of insinuations. Only when necessary did he inject his own personality."
Yeah. Transparent veil of insinuations. That phrase captures the exact mechanics of the passive pro.
It really does.
He was fully present. He was actively guiding the flow of the conversation with subtle prompts, but he was entirely acting as a mirror.
Think about your own life. To everyone listening, think about that person you've met at a networking event or a dinner party. You stand in the corner talking to them for an hour, the conversation flows beautifully, you feel completely understood, validated, and brilliant.
Right.
You walk away thinking, wow, that person is incredible, we're going to be great friends. But then you wake up the next morning, reflect on the night, and realize you know absolutely nothing about them.
It creates a strange dissonance when you finally realize what happened.
Because you did 95% of the talking. You shared your hopes, your complaints about your boss, your anxieties about your industry, and they just nodded, maintained great eye contact, and asked perfect, slightly probing follow-up questions.
Right.
So the question is that person just being a genuinely good, empathetic, active listener? Or is it a targeted extraction of your personal data?
If we look at this through the lens of power dynamics, the text argues that in the hands of someone like Talleyrand, it is absolutely a targeted extraction.
Okay.
The psychology of the friendly front relies heavily on human narcissism. Deep down, people love to talk about themselves. They are desperate for an attentive audience.
We all are. I mean, it feels good to be heard.
It feels intoxicating. And by actively suppressing his own ego, by resisting the incredibly common urge to jump in and say, oh, I know exactly how you feel. I had a similar experience last year.
Which is what most of us do to relate to others.
Exactly. By resisting that, Talleyrand created a conversational vacuum.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
And human ego abhors silence. The other person would rush to fill that vacuum, talking endlessly about themselves. And in their comfort, they would inadvertently reveal their hidden plans, their deep-seated anxieties, their true intentions toward a rival.
It is basically conversational judo. You are using their own momentum, their desperate desire to be heard and validated against them, to mine for information.
The true brilliance and the true danger of the maneuver is that the target completely mistakes your intense focus on them for genuine affection and friendship. You don't just walk away with valuable intelligence. You walk away with an ally who trusts you deeply because they feel you get them. It is a dual victory for the infiltrator.
That is incredibly potent. And this isn't just a modern concept or even an 18th century European diplomatic concept. The text roots this idea in some incredibly ancient foundational philosophy.
Yeah, let's look at those.
There's a quote here from Kautilya, a renowned Indian philosopher and royal advisor from the 3rd century BC, and it demands some serious unpacking. He wrote, "Rulers see through spies as cows through smell, Brahmins through scriptures, and the rest of the people through their normal eyes."
It is a dense, multi-layered metaphor about epistemology, how we know what we know. Kautilya is articulating the concept of specialized perception based on your role in the world.
Break down the cow analogy for us, because that's the part that really catches the ear. What does it mean for a cow to see through smell?
Well, a cow's primary, most sophisticated biological mechanism for understanding its environment isn't its vision. It's its olfactory sense. It sees the approach of predators, the location of food, and the state of its herd primarily through scent.
Okay.
A Brahmin, representing the scholar or the priest class, perceives the truth of the universe not through mundane, everyday observation, but through the deep lens of ancient scriptures and study.
And regular people.
Regular people just look at the surface of things with their physical eyes, taking the world at face value.
They see the friendly smile and assume it's just a friendly smile.
Exactly. But a ruler, a person wielding true power and responsible for the survival of a state, cannot afford to rely on regular sight. A ruler sees the hidden, treacherous reality of the world only through the intelligence gathered by spies and informants.
Interesting.
Without that hidden subterranean network of information, the ruler is effectively blind to the true mechanics of their kingdom.
So gathering intel isn't just a useful tool in the toolbox. It is literally a distinct sensory organ required for survival at the top.
Yes, and the text pairs Kautilya with another ancient heavyweight, Sun Tzu, writing in the 4th century BC in The Art of War.
Right.
Sun Tzu explicitly states that true foreknowledge, the absolute requirement to know the enemy's situation before you commit your forces, cannot be elicited from spirits, nor from gods, nor by analogy, nor by astrologic calculations. It must be obtained from men.
Basically, stop praying for a sign, stop checking your horoscope, stop trying to guess based on past events. You need concrete data from the source.
It marks a massive historical and philosophical shift, from superstition to empirical human intelligence. Sun Tzu is commanding leaders to stop looking at the stars to predict the future.
Because the future is already written in the hidden intentions, the fears, and the ambitions of the people around you.
Exactly. And you can only discover those intentions through direct human probing.
Which brings us to a fascinating pivot in the text. Because if Talleyrand represents the quiet art of passive listening, creating that comfortable vacuum for people to fill, the text acknowledges that sometimes silence just isn't enough to crack the vault.
All right, sometimes the target is too guarded.
So it offers highly active, aggressive, and frankly manipulative psychological traps to force the hidden truth out into the open.
The strategy moves from passive observation to active provocation.
Yeah.
You are no longer just leaving the door open. You are setting a tripwire.
Let's dive into these active provocations, because this gets into some truly dark psychology from some famous thinkers. Let's start with the 17th century French writer, François de la Rochefoucauld.
Okay.
The text highlights his cynical observation that sincerity is found in very few men and is often the cleverest of ruses.
He is outlining the concept of the false confession.
The tactic works like this. You are in a conversation, and you need information from someone who is being tight-lipped. So you pretend to bare your soul to them.
Right.
You offer up a secret, a vulnerability, a supposedly deep confession about your own life or business. And by doing this, you trigger a deeply ingrained psychological mechanism in the other person, the reciprocity response.
Human beings are fundamentally biologically wired for reciprocity. It is how our ancestors survived in tribes. If someone gives us a gift, we feel a profound social and psychological obligation to give one back.
Yeah, like if someone buys you a coffee, you feel like you have to buy the next one.
Exactly. Now, in the realm of intimate conversation, if someone gifts you a piece of highly sensitive information, the social pressure to reciprocate with your own intimate information is immense.
So you offer them a fake secret, or maybe a completely harmless truth, heavily disguised as a massive vulnerability. And the sheer pressure of the moment makes them hand over a real damaging secret in exchange.
You have weaponized sincerity to mine for data. It's emotional phishing.
Emotional phishing. That's a great way to put it.
It is incredibly effective because it exploits empathy. You're faking vulnerability to hijack the other person's natural human instinct to connect, comfort, and match your level of intimacy. They feel they owe you the truth because you supposedly gave them yours.
Moving beyond the false confession, the text brings in the 19th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer.
Right, Schopenhauer.
He was notoriously cynical about human nature, and he outlined 3 very specific conversational methods for drawing out the truth. They are essentially emotional bear traps.
Let's hear them.
Let's look at the first one, feigned belief. The idea is, if you suspect someone is actively lying to you in a conversation, you should not call them out. Instead, you should look as though you believe absolutely every single word they are saying.
Think about the internal mechanics of deception here. When someone is lying, they're usually operating under stress. They are tense, carefully monitoring your face and body language for any signs of skepticism or discovery.
So if you provide them with complete, uncritical, eager acceptance, you relieve that stress instantly. You give them courage.
Yes. The text notes that under this blanket of feigned belief, they become more vehement in their assertions.
They start to feel arrogant. The internal monologue shifts from, I hope they buy this, to I am a genius, they are buying every word.
And in that sudden rush of arrogant relief, they let their guard down. They over-embellish to make the lie even better. They add unnecessary, elaborate details.
Right.
And eventually, the architecture of the lie becomes too heavy. They trip over their own fabricated story, and they betray themselves.
You essentially give the liar enough rope to hang themselves with their own ego. Okay, the second Schopenhauer method is the exact inverse, feigned disbelief.
This is a fun one.
If you perceive that someone is trying to conceal something from you, like they're telling you half the story but holding back the crucial, damaging part, you're supposed to look as though you don't believe a word they are saying.
This tactic targets a completely different human vulnerability.
Mm.
Our desperate burning need to be believed and validated when we feel we are in the right.
The text states that this opposition provokes the person to bring out their reserve of truth, simply to conquer your incredulity. It's like if I tell you a crazy story about what happened at the office, and you just cross your arms, roll your eyes, and say, yeah, right, that didn't happen. My immediate visceral instinct is to say, no, seriously, I can prove it. Let me tell you this other completely secret detail that proves I'm telling the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're using their own frustration as a lever. To win the micro-argument of the conversation and prove they aren't a liar, they voluntarily hand over the very information they were actively trying to conceal just moments before.
Their desire to be right overrides their desire to be discreet.
Precisely.
Okay. This third Schopenhauer tactic is where it gets highly volatile, and I really want to push back on it. It's the tactic of irritation.
Okay.
He suggests vehemently, aggressively contradicting people you were in conversation with just to stir them up. The idea is to make them so mad that they lose control of their words.
Right.
But let's apply this to the real world. If you deliberately irritate someone at a dinner party or in a boardroom, don't they just get mad, label you a jerk, and shut down, or walk out of the room? Why does the text equate anger with truth?
Well, it is undoubtedly the highest risk tactic we've discussed. It can backfire spectacularly. But the psychology behind it is grounded in the concept of cognitive load during deception.
Okay, break down the cognitive load aspect for us. What does that mean in this context?
Lying, or even just carefully curating your words to maintain a specific corporate or social image, takes a tremendous amount of mental energy. It requires immense mental RAM, so to speak.
Right, your brain is working overtime.
Your prefrontal cortex is working overtime. You have to remember what you've previously said, calculate what you haven't said, track what the other person already knows, and tightly regulate your microexpressions and body language.
It's exhausting just thinking about maintaining that facade.
Now, what happens when you introduce a spike of intense anger or sudden irritation? The amygdala flares up. Emotion floods the nervous system. When people lose emotional control, they lose that tight cognitive grip on their carefully curated script. The mental RAM is completely flushed by the emotional surge.
Wow.
In their furious reaction, in their desperate desire to win the argument, defend their ego, or verbally hurt you back, they bypass their own diplomatic filters.
Right, so they might yell something like, I never liked your strategy anyway, and the CEO is planning to scrap your entire division next week.
Oops.
Oops, oops. They just revealed massive, highly confidential corporate restructuring plans purely because they wanted to win a shouting match over a minor disagreement.
Anger strips away the filter. The truth leaks out in the heat of the emotional explosion.
But the text does issue a massive glaring warning here, right? I mean, you cannot just walk through life screaming at people, faking deep confessions, and playing mind games all day.
If you attempt that, you will quickly find yourself entirely isolated.
Yeah.
The text explicitly states that you must practice these active tactics with extreme caution and delicate care. If your probing is clumsy or too obvious, if people start to suspect you are constantly trying to worm secrets out of them under the cover of conversation, they will strictly avoid you.
Right. The text advises you to emphasize friendly chatter, not valuable information.
If you come across as an interrogator, you have failed the assignment. The search for these gems of information has to be remarkably subtle, because if you ask too many pointed, highly specific questions, your very questions will reveal your own hidden intentions and highlight exactly what you are worried about.
Which completely destroys your transparent veil of insinuations. Your cover is blown.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've explored passive listening to create a vacuum, and we've explored active conversational traps to force facts into the open. But what if the information you need isn't a simple fact or a hidden business plan? What if the most crucial thing you need to know is what kind of person you are actually dealing with?
That brings us to the concept of the metaphorical pistol and the stress test for character.
This is where the strategy elevates from simply gathering data points to actively profiling human behavior under pressure.
Yes.
The core narrative here moves beyond extracting facts to testing loyalty and character. And we return to our friend Talleyrand for a brilliant historical example.
I read again.
This takes place at the Congress of Vienna, spanning 1814 to 1815. For context, this is essentially the gathering of all the major European powers, kings, diplomats, generals, trying to redraw the map of Europe after the devastating chaos of the Napoleonic Wars.
The stakes are unimaginably high. Empires are on the line.
Everyone is smiling and everyone is lying to everyone else.
It was the ultimate snake pit of high-stakes diplomacy. Trust was entirely non-existent.
And Talleyrand developed this incredible tactic to cut through the noise. He would be at a lavish social gathering surrounded by all these guarded foreign diplomats, and he would casually but clearly blurt out what seemed to be a massive top-secret piece of geopolitical intelligence. For example, he might lean in and say, "I have it on very good authority that the Tsar of Russia is planning to arrest his top commanding general for treason tomorrow."
The genius of the move is that the secret was completely 100% fabricated. Talleyrand made it up out of thin air.
Having dropped this absolute bombshell into the room, he wouldn't say another word. He would simply sit back, sip his wine, and deeply observe the room.
He watched the diplomats' immediate, visceral reactions.
Because if you hear that the Russian army is about to be thrown into catastrophic leadership chaos, your split-second reaction is going to betray your government's true intentions.
Right. If a diplomat's eyes widen with fear, Talleyrand knows they rely on Russian stability.
But if a diplomat's eyes light up with barely concealed greedy excitement,
Talleyrand instantly deduces, your country has secret designs on invading a weakened Russia.
wow. The text quotes Baron von Stetten, who witnessed this firsthand, describing the tactic perfectly. He said, "Monsieur Talleyrand fires a pistol into the air to see who'll jump out the window."
It's a phenomenally visceral image. You create a sudden, loud, artificial stressor, and you watch how the rats scatter.
Because in that split second of shock, before the years of diplomatic training and stoicism can kick back in, the mask slips.
True character and hidden geopolitical agendas are revealed by pure reflex.
If Talleyrand's pistol was a quick, sharp reflex test, the next historical example is a masterclass in slow, agonizing, mathematical psychological testing.
Oh, we're going to the Persian king now.
Yes, we are traveling back to the 7th century to King Chosroes II, a notoriously clever and paranoid Persian king. The text details this incredibly intricate, ruthless trap he would use to test his own inner circle of courtiers.
Right.
Walk us through this, because the logic here is almost algorithmic.
It functions as a perfect closed-loop A/B test of human loyalty. In a royal court, shifting alliances are incredibly dangerous to the monarch.
Obviously.
Chosroes would notice 2 of his courtiers becoming particularly close friends. He needs to know, when push comes to shove, are they loyal to the crown or are they loyal to each other?
Okay, so what does he do?
He initiates the protocol. He pulls courtier A aside, privately, into his chambers.
Just courtier A. Courtier B is totally unaware.
Correct. He tells courtier A, "I trust you more than anyone in this palace, but I have uncovered deeply disturbing information. Your good friend, courtier B, is a traitor to the crown. I'm going to have him executed."
Whoa.
Then he adds the absolute crucial condition. "You must keep this an absolute sworn secret. Tell no one."
The trap is set. Courtier A is now holding a radioactive, deadly secret about his best friend's impending doom.
And then the king does nothing. He simply sits back and intensely observes courtier B's behavior over the next several days.
Let's map out this logic tree for you listening, because the brutal efficiency of it is wild. The king is watching courtier B.
Okay.
Scenario 1. Over the next few days, courtier B acts completely normally around the king. He is smiling, relaxed, doing his job without any signs of stress. What does the king deduce?
The king deduces that courtier A kept his mouth shut. Courtier A valued his sworn loyalty and fear of the king over his friendship with B. He passed the ultimate test of state loyalty.
So what does the king do with that result?
The king immediately promotes courtier A, elevating his status. Then he takes A aside and says, "I investigated the treason matter further, and it turns out the rumors about your friend were entirely false. He is completely safe."
So A is highly rewarded, B is completely unharmed and oblivious, and the king now possesses empirical proof that he has a fiercely loyal servant in A.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's look at scenario 2. The king is watching courtier B, and suddenly B's demeanor drastically changes. He starts acting tense, sweating, avoiding eye contact with the king, making excuses to leave the room, looking terrified.
The deduction is immediate. Courtier A broke under the pressure. He leaked the royal secret to warn his friend to flee.
So A failed the test of loyalty. What is the fallout?
The king summons them both. He tells the terrified courtier B, "This was only a test of loyalty. You did absolutely nothing wrong. But because you are now part of this profound breach of royal trust, I can no longer rely on you. You are permanently banned from the court.
And for just being the passive subject of a fake rumor, I mean, that's incredibly harsh.
It is absolute zero tolerance. And as for Cordier, he proved under pressure that he cannot be trusted with a state secret and that his loyalty lies with his friends, not the crown. He is banished from the entire kingdom.
It is so cold.
Yeah.
But from a purely strategic standpoint, the logic is airtight. It removes all ambiguity.
This does raise a vital question, though. Why go through all this elaborate theatrical maneuvering?
Right.
Why use these odd, stressful forms of spying that only reveal character, rather than just deploying spies to gather empirical facts about troop movements, harvest yields, or tax revenue?
Right, why not just look at the spreadsheets instead of playing mind games?
Because, as the text profoundly argues, testing character allows you to solve problems before they manifest into reality. By tempting people into certain extreme situations, testing their absolute honesty, their ability to keep a life or death secret, you gain the most valuable knowledge a leader can possess: predictive profiling.
Okay.
Armed with the proven knowledge of someone's true character under fire, you can accurately predict exactly how they will act in a future unscripted crisis.
You know exactly who will jump out the window when a real crisis hits and who will stand their ground.
It allows you to build a foundation of certainty in an uncertain world.
So we have covered gathering information like Duveen, extracting it through conversation like Talleyrand and Schopenhauer, and testing for it like King Chosroes. But that brings us to the final and perhaps most critical evolution of this deep dive.
Yes.
Because if we establish that gathering information is the ultimate key to power, then it stands to reason that everyone else out there, your competitors, your rivals, are also actively trying to gather information on you.
You must operate under the constant assumption that you are being observed and probed.
The text puts it beautifully with a metaphor. If spying and gathering intel gives you a magical third eye that sees everything, how do you defend yourself against the third eye of your enemy?
You put it out. You blind them.
And the primary, most devastating weapon for blinding an enemy's intelligence network isn't secrecy, it's disinformation.
The text anchors this concept with a famous quote from Winston Churchill. Truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies.
It is a phenomenal paradigm-shifting concept. You don't just lock the truth in a vault and hope no one finds it.
Right.
You actively surround the truth with elaborate, highly convincing decoys. And the historical anchor the text uses to illustrate this is mind-blowing.
Well, this is a phenomenal piece of history.
It takes us to London in the summer of 1944, at the height of World War II. The Nazis have just unleashed the V-1 flying bombs, also known as buzz bombs. These were terrifying early cruise missile attacks raining down on the city.
Right, and the sources state that over 2,000 of these bombs fell on the greater London area, killing over 5,000 people and causing mass panic.
It was a horrific escalation. The psychological toll of hearing that engine cut out before the bomb dropped was immense.
But amid the devastation, British intelligence noticed a strange, highly consistent anomaly. The text notes that the Germans consistently seemed to miss their primary high-value targets.
Yeah.
They were aiming for crucial infrastructure like Tower Bridge or densely populated central hubs like Piccadilly Circus. But the bombs kept falling well short of the city center, landing in less populated suburbs to the south and east.
Which is incredibly fortunate for the survival of central London, but puzzling from a military analytics standpoint. Why were the German engineers' calculations so consistently uniformly wrong?
Right, why the same error over and over?
Because of Churchill's bodyguard of lies. The Germans, in order to fix their targeting and adjust the trajectories of these unguided rockets, were relying on empirical data. They couldn't easily fly reconnaissance planes over London, so they relied heavily on a network of secret agents they believed they had successfully planted inside England.
Okay.
These agents were supposed to radio back the exact coordinates of where the bombs were hitting.
The Germans thought they were gathering foreknowledge exactly as Sun Tzu advised. They were relying on human intelligence to see the battlefield.
But here is the magnificent counterintelligence masterstroke. What the German high command didn't know was that British intelligence, MI5, had already discovered and captured almost all of these German agents.
Oh.
And instead of just executing them or throwing them in prison, the British implemented the double-cross system. They turned them. They used these compromised agents under strict British control to radio back to Germany and feed them subtly, brilliantly deceptive information.
This is the absolute apex of the entire deep dive. It is the perfect reversal.
It's psychological judo on a massive scale. The British-controlled agents would radio the Germans and report, "Excellent strike! The bomb hit exactly on target at Tower Bridge. Massive casualties."
But in reality,
But in reality, that specific bomb had fallen 2 miles short of the bridge in a less critical area. So the German engineers, relying on this trusted data, would adjust their next launch.
oh, I see.
They thought they were compensating for wind or fuel issues, but because they were adjusting based on a lie, they were actually pushing the bombs further and further away from the real targets.
They were meticulously calibrating their weapons based on a hallucination provided by the enemy. They felt they were in control, but they were being steered.
The text notes that the British had to do this incrementally so the Germans wouldn't catch on, but by the end of the campaign, the V-1 bombs were hitting farther and farther out. Eventually, they were missing London almost entirely and just landing on cows in the country.
The sheer brilliance of using the enemy's absolute reliance on data against them to save thousands of lives.
It's incredible.
If we synthesize this WWII example with the text's final metaphor, it all clicks together perfectly. Spying, gathering real intelligence, gives you omniscience. It gives you the third eye of a god, allowing you to see further and deeper into the future than anyone else.
Right.
But disinformation. Disinformation is how you attack your enemy's sight.
You feed them a steady, believable diet of wrong information.
And by doing so, you put out their eye. You turn your enemy into a cyclops. And a cyclops, completely lacking depth perception, always misses his target.
Always.
You control the game not by hiding in the shadows, but by actively planting the fake reality you want them to confidently believe in.
So let's step back and look at the massive landscape we've covered today. We have been on quite a journey through the mechanics of human perception.
You really have.
We started with Joseph Duveen orchestrating a completely fabricated, multi-year serendipitous elevator ride to bypass the defenses of a billionaire. We looked at Talleyrand sitting in profound silence, letting the narcissism and vanity of others reveal their deepest secrets beneath a veil of insinuations.
We explored Schopenhauer's aggressive emotional traps to overload the cognitive RAM of a liar.
And Chosroes II's brutal mathematical A/B testing of human loyalty.
And finally, we saw the British saving London by turning the entire German intelligence network into a bodyguard of lies.
It is a comprehensive, sometimes unsettling spectrum of how humans manipulate truth, perception, and each other.
It's definitely unsettling.
And to you listening, I want to reiterate, the goal here isn't to walk away from this deep dive and try to become a master manipulator.
Right, please don't.
Don't start setting elaborate psychological traps for your coworkers or faking confessions to your spouse. The goal is to gain that third eye of awareness. By understanding these deeply ingrained mechanics, by paying close attention when your social guards are down, by understanding the potential strategic motives behind sudden friendly chatter.
And by recognizing when someone fires a metaphorical pistol into the air in a meeting just to see who panics.
Yes. You become immune to being played. You step out from behind the one-way mirror and see the room for what it is.
You move from being an oblivious pawn on the board, reacting to things you think are chance, to someone who can at least see the entire board clearly and understand the moves being made.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, we really need to address the deeper philosophical cost of all this strategy. I mean, we've spent an hour talking about the mechanics of power, but what is the human toll on the person wielding it?
That is the essential, lingering question to leave on. The text forcefully argues that the highest form of power is posing as a friend to gather intelligence, and that the ultimate defense is surrounding yourself with a bodyguard of lies.
Okay.
But if you internalize and adopt that worldview completely, if you view every single conversation as a potential data extraction event, and every new friend as either a potential informant or a threat,
Yeah.
does total strategic awareness require us to permanently sacrifice genuine human connection?
If you are always analyzing, can you ever just enjoy the party again? Can you ever just have a beer with a neighbor without wondering what their angle is?
Or, on the flip side, does understanding this dark psychology simply force us to be far more discerning, far more protective of our inner lives?
Yeah.
Does it make true, uncalculated vulnerability not a naive weakness, but the rarest and most intensely valuable gift we can give, but only to those we have actually tested and deeply trust?
It's a heavy, profound thought. If the whole world is playing chess in the dark, constantly probing and hiding, maybe the most radical, powerful act of all is finding someone you can actually turn the lights on with. Something to mull over next time you're at a networking event or a dinner party and someone seems just a little too interested in your hidden weaknesses. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.